So first image, Wonderland. Kind of, I kind of like your title with that and where you're thinking, and whether the mist in the background was part of the morning or whether you've added that sort of feel into the image afterwards. It really doesn't matter. It gives that great effect to it. I like your viewpoint where you're kind of using the chess pieces but keeping the space in between, and then we've got that sort of pathway to wander down into this wonderland behind. The use of the trees at the top filling in for the sky, I think, actually works. If you'd have just left it as a sky, I don't think it works the same way. Then using the trees to frame us, so it brings us into the center of the image. There's, some of my comments, I'm kind of a bit nitpicky sometimes, and I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the white pieces on the left-hand side, and I'm just thinking, was there enough space just to crop it so that the pawn was on its own and not sort of have a little bit of one in it? And potentially you could have moved them at sight. But just something for me that was a little small point that I might have looked at it and thought, do I want them in or do I not? But you've chosen to leave them in, so that's what we do. But as I say, I think the use of the composition and using that lead-in line works really well for the image. And that one's going to be scoring 17. Oh, it tells us which club. That'll be interesting. This kind of certainly has a feel that this isn't in the UK. Just the colours are so different. The mountain range, again, it's lovely, strong, dominating, and it doesn't matter what our photography is in genre, location, time of day. All of our photography is about light. And it's just as you've captured that light dancing across the hills, it's just sort of picking out some accents and some lights and shades. The use of the road, I think that works really well coming in. It's more often than not, we'd have that a bit more diagonal, but I think it works where it's coming in from this bottom right corner. It leads us straight down into that first point on the mountain side where the light is. And then obviously we then sort of follow across to the other side where all the light's dappled around it. Again, just small things for me. Do we need so much of the sky at the top? Mood point, some will, some won't. But I thought the coloration and saturation kind of just went with the whole feel of this. Again, your depth of field, it's sharp all the way through from foreground to background. So again, very deliberate choices about what you were taking. And that one's going to score 18. Now, some of the dangers with certainly digital competitions and PDIs is, was it taken as a digital image, or was it taken as a film or slide and then sort of digitized in whatever format? Because there's a bit of a feel for me for this that it may not be completely digital from its originality. And the main reason I'm thinking of that is the sky. It's quite grainy and quite noisy, which if you were doing this digitally and infrared, you tend to have that a lot cleaner. So it does make me wonder whether, say, the originality started out as something different. And obviously, infrared, it does this weird things with leaves and creates these lovely colours. I think the light in the front in the trees really adds to our interest. And obviously we've just got the disappearing landscape as it goes into it. As I say, it's one of those images that, we're so used to really clean images digitally. Whether you could have cleaned it up or not a little, don't know. You may have wanted to stay with the effect that it was. But for me, I did feel it let it down a little bit. And that's going to score 16. Yeah, I mean, the sea is just, I love being near the sea, and particularly when it's rough like this, if you can get out and shoot, it's really great to be able to do that. For me, I kind of like the bird in the scene. Kind of just adds a little bit of element to the sky. Otherwise, we're probably talking about cropping quite a bit of the top of that sky off. So it just adds that bit of extra interest. Again, it's personal choice and personal opinions. I'm not sure if the color palette suits it, the tone that you put onto the image. It's kind of got a feeling you want to try and go a bit sepia with it. And I'm just looking at that, and for my personal taste, I'm looking at a strong black and white for me would have been a better image for it, because the textures that you've got in the where the waves crashing over in front of us, there's some lovely textures in the sort of steps and railings there. But you've chosen to sort of put a sepia tone on it, and that's what we go with. One of the really strange things when you do seas like this when they're rough is it's just, you never know what you're going to get. And I love this sort of in this sort of part of the scene here where this light comes through. Kind of just really like that bit of light that's coming through in the image. It kind of just gives you a sense of somewhere to look and focus on. That's scoring 17. Again, a fairly similar-ish feel to the trees we've just seen. Certainly get the feel again it's infrared. And there was a couple of things about this for me that I kind of thought they were really fortunate. While some of this is about you and your positioning, but it was the way these clouds that come from the top left, creating that diagonal line going through the image. Normally we're seeing sort of diagonals and stuff coming from bottom left, bottom right. So unusual to see it from the top. Lovely lighting on the hut in the foreground. Some good detail and texture coming through. But again, just a little bit of noise coming through in the sky. So again, whether it was converted from a normal color image or again film, don't really know. But again, just that little bit of hint of noise. And that's scoring 17. There's a few things for me with the image. I kind of, again, there's this feel of a sepia tone being added to it. And I kind of like that. I think it does work for the image because there's a bit of a contrast between making it a sepia tone, so you're kind of giving it an old-fashioned feel. But then we've kind of got a guy up on the right-hand side who's quite clearly got a modern hard hat as the one further down. So that sort of mix of trying to make an old and new type of blend and stuff with it. Where it has gone sepiaed, and what can you do with judges? You can't win with us. This one I feel is a bit too clean and wants some noise added in it. Now I'm just telling you other images are too noisy and take it out. So you can't win. You're not designed to win. I'm the boss of the evening, so that's how it goes. You just have to live with it. But I felt it just needed a bit of something in it. Maybe it just needed a bit of added clarity to give it a bit of texture and a bit of grunge. Again, just a couple of things. The building at the very back, I might have been tempted just to tone that down a bit. It's quite bright, and once you sort of see it, you kind of get lost in looking at the building and not concentrating on what's going on with the two taxis in the foreground. That one's scoring 17. And it's doing me heading because I still can't even remember the name of the castle, and I've been to it and photographed it myself. And no, and I still can't remember it either. Pardon?
Johnstonborough.
Johnstonborough, that's the one. We stayed in a little cottage, literally in the same village, and we were quite fortunate with the weather we had. So yeah. Again, I like the way you've framed it sort of over on the right hand side, and then using this sort of path and people as a lead-in round into it. I kind of wondered, Does it suit the monochrome? Yeah, it probably does. But I'm thinking you probably went monochrome because of the lighting conditions. There's quite strong side lighting coming in. You can see on the castle it's quite bright one side, bit of shadow into the other, although it's still got detail. And again, for me, you've got this cloud base going across the top of the image, and then you've got more sort of bland sky above it. So why include that bit? It's not adding any extra to the image. So just use that cloud base and perhaps take a bit of the top off through that part of it. But again, as I say, compositionally wise, you've set it out well. It's giving us a sense of scale and place as well. And I'm sounding like a broken record because that's going to be 17. Somebody's asking for more volume in the chat. I don't know if that's something we can do on Zoom or whether it's the volume control of the person, but I don't know if somebody caught that in the chat. So, train station. Quite a challenging picture to take, actually. You've got some quite bright lighting, so it's obviously giving you some burnout, particularly at the back. But then if you expose for that, then you're going to have a load of shadow and you're not going to have any detail in the people on the platform going into it. So there's a balance of what to do when you have these sorts of images. And I think this is the right approach to it, is to not worry about that bit in the background. You've got enough light on the trains at the front that it doesn't sort of immediately drag us down that end. Again, good detail in the two fronts of the trains. And then sort of using again that, that line as a diagonal taking us through down into the station and what's going on with different people doing bits and pieces, going around their daily chores by the looks of it. So there's a good little story into this as well as the challenges of taking the image. Again, straw 17. Kind of an interesting choice, and it's one of those things when we're doing competitions via Zoom, the pictures will look slightly different than they do if you're looking at them on your own calibrated monitor. And this one's certainly got a couple of little bits and pieces in it that weren't necessarily showing up on mine, but then there are some bits that have disappeared that were showing on mine. So interesting. Always a brave choice whenever we're doing any flower and fauna to turn it into monochrome. It's normally the colours and the vibrancy that attracts us and what we want to take pictures of. For me, I think what you've achieved here is spot on. The focus on the flower in front of the being in the centre and that bit being absolutely bitingly sharp, I think is the correct thing to do. So it showed that you knew what you were doing around using your camera to move the focus point around and just not use the centre one. And then obviously just this fading it out through the monochrome into the background. What is sort of showing up a little bit on Zoom is something down here, which, the rest of the image is all black, but that's sort of coming through. And then over this side again, it may well be this is some lily type pads or whatever, but there was some bits of leaves coming through in this part of the image, which I think where the right hand side is all black, I think I'd like to have seen the left hand side all black. And that could be quite achievable through post-production as well. And again, I'm sorry, it's another 17. They do change from 17, honestly. There are some things as judges that, we sometimes say things that you photographers know anyway, really difficult taking pictures of snow and making snow kind of white. This is a little bit on the sort of muddier side, but I think that goes with what they're trying to do with the picture. Excuse me. I did have to check myself because when I first saw it, I thought, oh God, look at the dust spots. And then I realized it actually is snowing. and there was snow all over the place. So it's I did have to double check myself. Love the lone tree. Just yeah, beautifully sharp, well framed. The reflections in the wet road, I think, come through well as well. I mean, the sky is ideally for what you wanted, nice and grey, all sort of one tone. It really helps stand out. Only really small thing, nitpicky a little bit. I might have been tempted to make a little selection on the tree and just lighten it a little so that it's obvious what you want me to look at. Yes, the road is taking me in, and it's getting me to the tree and that sort of lovely skeletal feel they have in winter. But just being a little bit lighter, I think, would have also helped it. And we're going to hold that image. Now, quite often with abstract images like this, I'm telling the photographer off, because what they'll do is, this has got an abstract title and it's an abstract image and I have no idea what it is. But what sometimes people will do is they'll put in the title what it is. And then to me, that's ruined the point of the abstract image, because you've told me what it is, I've worked it out. I'm now looking at this and I have no idea what this is, what you've done to it, how you've done it. So it's engaging. As a picture, it's done what you wanted it to do. It's made me stop, and I'm asking questions about what is it? What's this other color that's coming out from the center? You know, is this an image of your thoughts of what a black hole would look like? Is it a petal of some description that you've done an ICM? Or again, I have no idea, and I don't need to know. It's my story that I'm reading into it, and other people will read completely different things into it. Again, you know, it's not going to lose marks or anything for this. One of the things sometimes with this type of image is to put a border around it, but not a massive white border. Pick a color out of the one of the tones out of the red and put like a 1 pixel border around the image so we know where it ends, but have the opacity quite low so that it's not obvious, but it's just there as like a key line. So 1 pixel border, pick up the color. Be a really fascinating image. And as I say, no idea what it is. So, and I don't need to know. And we are going to also hold that image. So interesting, you've called it moody stones. I've got a feeling this is Castle Rig up near Keswick. It's just got that look and feel about it. For me, there's a couple of things. Would I have taken a bit off the top and the bottom and made it a bit more panoramic? The sky is very bright in the image, and particularly top center, so it is kind of, you know, leading me out the image a little bit. So would a panoramic suit this? Don't know. Somebody to have a look at and see. Certainly the stones itself, you've certainly done, for me, the right thing. Quite often we'll see a monochrome of something like this, and people aren't brave enough to kind of leave shadows dark. You know, black and white is meant to range from blacks to darks with ranges of grey in between it. And quite often what they'll do is they'll lift the shadow areas. So the fact that you've left the shadow areas nice and dark, there is still a hint of detail in them, so they're not gone completely black into shadow. The stones themselves, yeah, I mean, they're almost in the same focal plane, but I know that there is a bit of depth about them. So you've chosen your depth of field to make sure all of the stones are nice and sharp. So again, I thought it was a cracking image. Just wondered about the crop part of it. And again, we're on the breaking record because I'm holding that one as well. So I do like your concept and the idea of what you were doing with this as an image. And I don't mind the sort of bright starburst out on the left-hand side of the sun coming through. Quite often that type of thing can be quite distracting, but it's coming through with the shadows on the path as well. There is a couple of things. And I know you can't do anything about it. It is just a refraction on the lens, but I might have been tempted to see if I could have taken that, see if I could have taken that part of it out. So it just left the path clear. And I did wonder if I needed so much of the tree on the right hand side, whether it's a bit on the thick side and when it could come in just a tad. But again, conversion to mono, I think works with that. It's certainly using the light and shade that exists within the image that you've got on the pathway leading us through. 15. Again, no idea where this building is, but that sky that's come with that, absolutely see why you picked that title. The building has that look about it as well. Whether the sky is genuine or dropped in, who cares? It's not obvious. And you couldn't want for that sort of twist of that cloud to be anywhere more perfect. It's just in the right spot. It just absolutely suits. Again, conversion to mono, I think suits it. It really concentrates what you're looking at. Again, moot point, I might have just brought the bottom up a little bit, but it's a moot point just to look and see whether I needed that little bit of extra space at the bottom, whether I could have just taken it up to the edge of the sort of what I'm going to assume is sand dunes. Again, conversion to mono works for it. Again, great structure in the building, and the light and shade that you've managed to capture through the roof panels. Yeah, really, if it's a genuine sky, you were really, really lucky to get that. Just works so much for it. And we are going to be holding that one as well. Kind of, for me, I was kind of intrigued to know what it was as a lace cap. It's got the feeling that it's some sort of glass structure with the lace inside of it, but I wasn't sure. But it kind of didn't matter too much. There's a lot of the photographer in the image about how you set your stall with taking it. It's almost symmetrical on the left and the right hand side. I like the patterning that exists in the glass. The actual flowers lace that are in it, the actual detail that it's coming through those petals is superb. And quite easily in a digital image, we could lose that and it just look a bit burnt out and a bit washed out. But it's come through really, really well. I do actually think this would look stunning printed on a sort of fine art textured paper. I think it'd really bring out the texture and stuff that you've got in the petals. That's not to say it's a poor picture. I just think as a print, it would be even better. And that one is also being held. Now, for us in the UK, this is so photographed. And I imagine there's places in the States exactly the same where, it's another shot of whatever it is because everybody goes there. This particular mill, it's so well photographed pretty much at this angle. There are a few different ones. And I'm led to believe that this picture is actually taken on private land and we shouldn't be doing it. But it's the photogenic side, so everybody does it. So I don't know if the guy's actually going to stop it or do anything about it. Again, compositionally wise, it's set up well, good control of the colours and the greens through the image, depth of field exactly as you want it to. Shutter speed, it's going to be personal preference. Some people just only do half a second, others will do 2-3 minutes because they want to change the effect of how the water's coming through. So that's always going to be down to personal choice. For me, yeah, I'd go a bit longer, but that's just my taste. And I try to do this when I see these sorts of pictures. Ideally, what you want is where you've got some of these rocks and you've got that nice autumnal leaf on it. There's not always a leaf there, is there? So did you go and put them all there? just for effect. I don't think so, I'm playing, but you know, it just adds to that extra element where the water's running through the rocks, and you've got those little tunnel colours on it. It just works really well. And that's another image that we're holding. Now again, you know, this comes down to a bit of personal preference, as to whether, you know, where does photography and digital art, where's that line, where does it blend? Others have got quite a wide gamut of it, others not so much, and are a bit more realistic. I like the idea of what you've created. I like the colours, the textures that you've got on the apple and the fish. I think that part of the image works really well for me. What I was actually finding was that the background that it's on, I was actually finding that quite distracting. It's quite strong. The lines going across diagonally are quite powerful. The colours are quite powerful. And it's almost as though our apple fish is being lost into that. So if you could have had a different background, maybe tone the colours down on this, I don't know, soften it. The main thing you want me to look at is the centerpiece, the apple fish, and that bit is very good. I think the background is just having a bit of a compete with it. But scoring 18. I'm going to put money. This is Lancaster UK Camera Club that's taken this picture. There's a thing called timeline events. And we see quite a lot of these types of images where they've got a Lancaster bomber and you know, they hire modelers and stuff, and we pay some money and we goes along, and they do generally shoot these at night and use lighting to light it. So there's an argument going around about how much of input have you had into the image. Now you've still got to decide your aperture and get the shutter speed right. They don't tell you that bit of it. So you've still got to work on that part of it yourself. I think for me, the sky works, you know, just the right amount of light within it coming from ambient and possibly a bit of spill from the actual lighting, maybe a bit from you as well. Same with the foreground, just enough lighting in it to see that it's a runway. And again, just that added hint of mist as they're coming out from the plane, as if though the engines have just stopped and there's some smoke coming through. So yeah, it's a very good shot of its type of this sort of image, and that's also going to score an 18. There are certain images that when we take them and when we view them, we've got this thing about saying, you know, oh, the eye makes me wander down the path. And, you know, if you get to a gate, it's like, oh, well, the gate's stopping me getting in. Why do we say all these things? You know, for me, I'm looking at this and thinking, right, you've stood at that point and it looks like I've got a choice of paths to go. You know, I've got this obvious one on the right-hand side. There's then the second one sort of running parallel. Does that go somewhere different? Can I do a left? You know, is there a pathway through the gate to the field? And is there another pathway? So there's a lot of story in this for me about choices of routes to go and which pathway to take. Again, sky works really well for you in this image. It kind of does look like there's a bit of movement in it. So whether you've used a tripod and had a kind of couple of seconds to get a bit of movement in it, don't know. But again, lovely lighting from the sky as well. It's giving you some lovely foreground lighting as well. And it's allowing you to get some detail. Again, it's just small things, mute point. You know, this right-hand side of the image, would I have cropped it so that the tree just formed a stop on that right-hand side, and not necessarily have, oh, look, I like what Mike's doing. I can't see everybody on camera, but I can see Mike Freshwater's got something out and he's looking at it. Give me a thumbs up if you think it works with the, yeah, look at that. See, us judges are right sometimes. So just bringing it in, so it just gives it that extra border. It works on the left-hand side. And again, I think there's a lovely color palette through this. It's got some lovely muted colors and tones. again, I think that would look good as a printed image on some matte paper. Scoring 17. There'll be a couple of images that I talk about when you go monochrome, about not being frightened to go monochrome and go black and white. So I mentioned the other stains where the shadow detail. So this one here, this rock on the right hand side, there's some shadow detail which potentially isn't there in the image, because it would have been too dark and you potentially tried to lift it. For me personally, I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't try and lift it. I'd leave it as it is and really leave it black, and almost get dodge and burn tools out and burn the blacks in a bit more, but dodge some of the lighting and make it a bit brighter. I think that would really enhance this. And again, I think one of the other things for me that works with this is you've got these fractured stones, but then the way the sky is coming through the image, the sky's almost got a diagonal, but then that's almost got some fractured lines in it as well. Now, Zoom is making the sky look really horrible on my screen, and I assume it's doing the same on yours. It isn't that bad on the actual image itself. But again, it's giving me that sense of being fractured. So I thought it was a well-spotted image, but I think you could have been much bolder with sort of blacks and whites and really sort of pushed it. Even introduce some micro contrast just to really bring out some of that edge detail. That's going to score 18. So again, I'm just going to talk sky and just talk dark, and do we need the dark bit at the top? Take it off from there. The guys in Lancaster UK will know my other half. She looked at this and went, "Oh yeah, I really like that image." And so, if she's saying she likes it, I'm normally corrected at the end of the evening from choosing the winners anyway. So it is a good image. I love the fall that comes in from left to right and brings you down into that valley floor in the center. And there's almost like a path leading us through that center to the down into the mountains itself. And again, similar to the first image with the dappled light. There's some lovely little spots of light coming through. Love the fact there's a little bit of snow still on some of the mountain tops. And again, your choice of depth of field, is pretty much sharp front to back all the way through, which is what you were designing to do with the image. And again, a score of 18. It's sometimes with nature images in particular, the nature photographers kind of know what they're doing, and they tend to produce some really stunning images. And sometimes as a judge, it's like, well, what do we add to the image for you, because it's a good image. But it's for those, sometimes the comments that we make are for other people to understand why we think it's such a good image. For me, there's a couple of things. First of all, you're at eye line with it. So whether that's just because you're fortunate that you're in a dip, or whether you are actually on laying down or kneeling down, so you're at eye line with it. The fact that you've managed to have the eye and head pin sharp. And I know a lot of UK nature judges won't like the negative space on the right hand side, but I do like that negative space. I'm wondering, what's it looking at? Has it sort of heard your approach? And is it, looking at you, the ears are pricked? Is it looking for a straight route to sort of bolt to? Or is it just checking you out to see what you're doing? I don't know. There's all sorts of stories. Again, background, it's diffused beautifully. I wonder why turning it to monochrome, but it works just fine for it. But there was obviously a reason for it. Again, an image we're going to hold. I kind of love the little play on Windows 2019. Particularly as we're just all about to go into Windows 11. I thought Windows 2019 was quite clever. I'm assuming that's the year it was taken as well. I've said before, lighting is a lot to do with our photography. And for you, I love the way this light and shade has given you the lightness in the center, but you've got this darkness on either side of it. I think that really works. It actually creates a three-dimensional shape within the image because of that. You can literally see it is a strong corner on this right-hand side. And while this building would have been really bright for you, again, dealt well with exposure. There's plenty of texture and detail within the walls and the panels that exist. Again, I might have been tempted just to have played around with, adding that bit of clarity just to bring some edge detail into it. But again, I thought that was a really strong image, and I don't think it matters where the window cleaners are, but they just happen to be sitting in the right spot for you in this instance. And that one I was going to score 19. I kind of felt you were dead jammy with the feathers just skimming on the water. And that's the whole point that you put the image in, because it's just, it's barely breaking the film. It's almost as though it's just literally pushing the film down. That part of it is just absolutely luck. You couldn't have attempted to do that. Actual as the bird itself, again, in flight, pin sharp, lovely colours on it. Managed to deal well with the whites. Quite often we'll see herons at the back of the necks burnt out, but plenty of detail in this. Love the black background that it's got against it. Again, whether you've enhanced that to be black or whether it was just the way it worked on the day. Couple of little things. It didn't show up. Oh, it's probably Zoom that's doing this, I'm sorry to say, because I don't remember seeing it on the image itself. I've just noticed at the very top of the image is the giveaway that you've been playing around with the background. So yeah, just crop the top off of that. I don't know if that's my system giving me a warning or somebody else's. No, it was mine. Mine was giving me a warning about resources. So yeah, I might have been tempted just to take that bit off of the top, just because then it makes the background stand out. But you have given it space to move into, so I do like that as well. And that's also scoring 19. Again, infrared. I don't know whether it's a converted camera, filters, just converted in software, no idea. And it's good to see some infrared coming back into Camera Club world. This particular one was probably the strongest of the infrareds that I've seen. I love the way the lights come through and the leaves behind the actual mill itself. Just love the way that comes through. It's your composition, I know, but really lucky that this tree you've got coming in from the sort of top right, it's got that little space between it, so you've got it framed between the gap in the trees. I think that works really well for it. Again, using the fence post and the path as your lead-in line going into the image. I just think there's a lot to like about that. Good texture and detail within the actual mill itself and the building. And that one's also going to score a 19. Now I know it is because the photographer wouldn't have done it, but for some reason it looks like it's horizontal, tipping to one side and not horizontal. It certainly is because the bank is horizontal, and I think you've framed that deliberately for that. But for some reason, the bridge just looks tilted, and I don't know why. Love the little tree on the left-hand side, the little skeletal tree. Great sense of scale to the bridge itself. Again, the misty morning and the fog, yeah, absolutely get where you're going with that. It comes through beautifully. There's just enough clearness for you and the bridge. And it may well just be where the light's coming in and the way that it's kind of looking. But if you look on the right-hand side under the bridge, there's a sort of a warm tone, a sort of pinky magenta warm tone to the image, which may well just be from a sunrise and the colours. But when you look top right onto the top left of the image, it doesn't seem to have that same colour in the sky. Now, again, it could well be just really natural in how it looks, but it kind of felt as if there might have been, I mean, you might have tried to put a graduated tone on it or tried to duotone it, but it just felt quite a bit unnatural in that top left corner. But morning fog is still scoring 18. So it's, again, you know, photography is all about light, and that you can see from the way the sky moves from, you know, this dark, moody sky on the left to brightening up on the right-hand side. It's giving you some fantastic side lighting on the certainly the two bridges that we're looking straight at. Not so much on the one on the left, because obviously we're looking at the dark side of that bridge. So it's really brought those to life and allowed you to punch the colours. Choice of shutter speed, again, it's always one of those ones. Some people are going to dislike it. Others are going to be happy with the fact that this is, you know, potentially a couple of minutes long, if not a bit longer. But again, some great colours coming through. It'd be interesting to print that on a metallic paper and see what it looked like, particularly with the river at the bottom of how that looks, because there's some lovely repetition of the bridge coming through in that with some of the colours. And that's scoring 18. So one of the biggest challenges with these types of pictures when they come into camera club and particularly into competition is that the person who's connected to this, and whether that be the female in the scene, whether it's the person taking the picture, the person who the picture is taken for, they'll have a massive connection with this. And it really doesn't matter whether it's a competition picture or not. They've just got a massive connection with the image. Doesn't always make them great competition images. For me with this one, lovely connection between I'm going to assume the mother, looking down at the baby and the baby looking back up. I think that connection is really strong. You can kind of see it. The choice of vignette, yeah, I think you've probably done that to really center us on what you want us to look at with that connection going on between the two people. But I did feel it was a little bit heavy on vignetting, and it's an image, as I say, for the people that are connected to it. It's an absolutely wonderful image, and nobody's going to disagree with you. For a competition, not quite so strong, I'm sorry to say, but it's still going to score a 17. So even for us in the UK, this is a well photographed and well seen bit of photography, and it's always about trying to capture that light. And we've seen it with wide angle and all sorts of different lenses, but it is about capturing the colours that exist when the light catches it. And again, it's a really difficult one because the light that you're having and the haze that you've got because of the heat of the day and everything that's going on, it kind of, there's almost a change of contrast in the image. I love the strength of the rock, the colours that are in it, the textures you've got in it, the detail you've pulled out of it. but then the haziness of the scene through it kind of clashes a bit. And it's completely natural. I know that. There's very little you can do about it. There are some tools that deal with dehazing, but I've got a feeling if you did that, it might then ruin the actual bit of the arch and the rock. So caught between two stools of trying to do something with it. But still did enjoy the image. 18. Yeah, again, shutter speed choice about what you want to do. I get a feeling this is sort of about 2 to 3 seconds because of the way the water's falling through it. Again, you've set your stall out really well. You've got we're following the sort of water up through to the lump of hill or mountain in the background. Really fortunate you had a nice cloudy day. There's a lovely bit of mist filling in that background. So it's not just a horrible bright blue sky. Again, your choice of depth of field, it's really sharp in the foreground. It's just going a little bit softer in the background, but that's to be expected with this type of picture. You'll never have it pin sharp front to back. The cameras just don't work that way. It's what we call acceptably sharp. So I think your stall was set out right. Love this little boulder on the left hand side, also giving us a little lead-in line to the water. You may or may not have used, but it's kind of not coming through for me. If you'd have used a polarizer, I think it might have just allowed some of the colours in the rock under the water to come through. That may well be that it has been polarized and the light was just the wrong side and it wasn't going to do anything for it. But again, still an image that was to be enjoyed with that kind of imagery. And that's going to score a 19 as well. Again, I've said a lot about light in our photography. It's really lit up this cliffside on the right-hand side of the picture. Some great colours and textures coming through. Again, choice of shutter speed, quite longish. You've got that sort of almost cotton ball effect coming in. And for me, it's very deliberate on the part of the photographer to have put the lighthouse on the very top right corner. And again, I know in the UK that upsets a lot of judges because they want the lighthouse to be more of a meaning point in the image. To me, I think that is the right spot for it. It adds an absolute sense of scale to the cliffside and from where you're shooting. Again, right choice for me. But the sky, you've cropped it down. It may be straight from camera, but it's cropped down to the right spot. You're not going to add anything more above it, so why include it? And just that lovely little color that exists through the sky as well. And there's also, again, just a hint in the distance on the rocks, where the sea's been crashing against it, you can still see those plumes coming up. So again, well set out from the photographer, but everything about this is very deliberate from your perspective. And again, it's another image we're going to hold. So one of the challenges that we have as camera club judges when we go to a camera club itself, this sort of image comes up. It's got the title it's got, and you've got no idea what the connection is between the title and the image. The beauty of having the images beforehand is you can look the word up and find out what the meaning is, and then kind of make a sense of what the photographer was making a connection with. And it's something, actually I mentioned this only a couple of weeks ago when I was at Lancaster, about images and titles. And if you go to an art gallery, there's generally a little synopsis about an image. This is exactly one of those images that sometimes a synopsis with the title would get a meaning for people to look at. And I'm not going to tell you what it is either. You're going to have to look it up yourselves. So again, very abstract in what its nature is, but then that's exactly what it's designed to be doing. While I do make the connection with what you were doing. There was only really one bit for me that I kind of thought there's a couple of areas. So top left, it's all filled with this green. Bottom left is a dark corner. And when you look on the right hand side, you've got two dark corners. So I might have just been tempted to have filled that in with the green on that bottom corner. And I know it sounds really nitpicky, but I don't know. It was just something for me that I felt it kind of needed. But then the rest of the image, it fits with what it says the title is. So it's worked from that perspective. And that's going to score 18. This is such a bizarre looking image. These greens at this sort of mid height of the image. Now I'm guessing that at some point in the year, this is a swampland and water possibly comes up to that level. I don't know, I'm guessing. But there's just something really odd about that green through the center of the image. It's really strong. If we were talking about this being a landscape, you put the horizon in the middle, you're not meant to do that. So this kind of green through the middle really works for me. Also like that sort of autumnal feel to the colors in the leaves in the trees, and the sort of skeletal nature of it as well. And then at the bottom, again, some lovely colors and greens and just the way it's been photographed, I thought would come through really strong. It did feel a little soft in places. And I kind of wanted a bit more depth about it. And again, I'm just wondering, maybe left-hand side, could we crop it into that tree? But again, moot point as just something to think about. But there's a few places when you start looking, you can start to see shapes and faces in the sort of roots in some of them at the bottom. And it also kind of gave me a feel of, remember the film Avatar? There were some strange scenes that kind of looked like this in it. It just kind of gave me that strange feeling. So yeah, very different image. 18. So quite a popular character as a portrait study. I don't know if he actually is a model for hire or if he just turns up at some of the events. And as the person, I think you've absolutely captured him spot on. The communication you've had with him, he's understood the message that you want, the stare, the face, the expression. It's really strong. And I know this is the effect that you wanted to get, and it's worked from that perspective. But for me, it doesn't work. And this is the out of focus fist in the foreground. It's very deliberate on your part. It's what you wanted to do with your depth of field, is to kind of have that blurred out in front of you with him being sharp. But to me, actually, if I take his hand out of the scene, I think it's still as strong as an image. You've really captured it well. You've resisted the temptation with monochrome and particularly men, where we've had shall we say, a exciting long life, and we have that look about us on our face. You've resisted the temptation to kind of really push that out and make it look over processed. I think it suits really well. I'm not sure if the background was genuine, but it kind of is okay. It does. It fits okay. There's not any obvious sort of patterning, but it just does have a little feel that it could have been a bit softer on the edges. But for me, as I say, I just felt if you take the fist away, it's still a really strong image. Harry Means Business was at 18. Nearly lost a place on the sheet there. Again, tranquility. Why make it a monochrome? With the color of the day and maybe a blue tone, sort of really communicate that tranquility a lot more than necessarily as a mono. Don't know, personal preference. So Yeah, certainly that feeling of tranquility comes through. The sky suits it from that perspective. The reflections in the water, again, all suits it. What I was feeling, however, was that the conversion to mono and some post-processing has brought some slight, if you look at the edges around the trees, there is just some sort of slight haloing around those sorts of edges, which is, I know some of it is the regression of light and through the back of the image, but it did just appear to be a bit shadowy from that perspective. I did like the sort of way that each sort of step layers back through itself, and then we get this sort of lovely V shape as a reflection in the water. It kind of really sort of blended itself to letting you look into the image and look down into the depths of it. But scoring 16. A really bold choice to, background color. I think it works. I think it really stands with the image. Whether it was done with a gel or just sort of light in the background, it doesn't really matter. Critical thing is lighting on the face. This skin tone can be really, really difficult to photograph and light. You can, lose detail easily. It's very easy to burn out. But the lighting, I thought, is just about spot on. I'd like to see a little bit more light in this nearest front eye, but it's okay. But love the sort of look, that sort of look over the shoulder and the communication you've had with this particular model. I think that works really well. Again, you knew what you were doing. It's a fairly shallowish depth of field because some of the hair is just going a little bit softer, but you've managed to get this front eye absolutely sharp, which was the most important bit. And Sarah's scoring 18. There's a sort of a little bit of me that says, is it deliberate on the photographer or was he just lucky? His foot's just in the bottom of the frame. If you'd have been up just another little bit more and you kind of half cut his foot off, I know that sounds a weird thing to start talking about, but if you cut his foot off, it's the first thing we would start talking about. So the fact that you've just got him in the bottom of the frame, I think works. The focus on him, and he's the nice, bright, sharpest part in the picture, really works. The steam really suits, and you were fortunate that the steam's come around and it's just covering his body, and his head has stayed out of it, and his head's biting me sharp. That bit I do like and enjoy. Love the reflections you've got in the tank. Hard to photograph without it showing any burnout, but really cleverly done. Also like the fact the engine driver seems to be getting out as well. So yeah, good image focusing on just the person doing what it is. I think the clue of the flag would give us a clue as to which side of the Atlantic this image was taken on. But that scores 18. So I'm going to say it's a composite. It's always dangerous to assume, but I'm guessing that you've dropped this lady into this scene. I get a feeling the bird in the top right has even been added into it. And while I get the connection with the title and the sort of the story that's created by the bird circling and the person, there's a story there of, is the bird waiting for death as this person attempts to cross this desolate landscape. So I kind of get where you're going with the story, but I just felt she doesn't look right in the scene. Her feet kind of look like they're a different color, and her sort of whole pattern, it doesn't look like it's the same lighting conditions of the sort of certainly the foreground landscape as that she is. So she looks a bit duller and a bit softer. Now, That's not to say that it isn't genuine, it's just a feeling I get. But it doesn't look like it's been a cut and paste. So it does look quite genuine and quite believable in that sense. I just didn't feel it fitted with the scene that you've got in the image. But as I say, it's been well constructed, put together. 17. It's amazing what we see to photograph sometimes. Quite often, certainly for me and Sonia, when we go out somewhere, we're going to go somewhere to take pictures, and I tend to be going somewhere to take pictures, and Sonia will sometimes stop and she'll look up and look down, and she'll take pictures of things on the floor and things I just walk past. And this has got that feel about it for me, that it's somebody looking around where they are in their surroundings and seeing things in imagery. And there's such a contrast between the tree and the wall in the background. But it just works for me. The detail that you've got in the tree and the wall just really suits. And I can't tell you why it works, but for me it just does. And I think also that's another picture on a matte textured paper, art paper. I think that would look stunning. I did an image with a similar sort of wall, and I printed it on a bamboo paper. And the bamboo paper actually has a texture to it, so it feels a bit scratchy. It did take some of the saturation and colour out, but again, that's an image to me that on that sort of paper would just be really, really stunning. And again, it's a really simplistic picture. It's a picture of a tree and a wall, but it's just all the way the colours work and the way they bleed into each other, and then just how nature has just got its own colours complementing it. And we're going to hold that one. Again, very rare to see a triptych in a camera club competition. And I don't know why we don't do more. I don't know what the images are. I'm assuming, I didn't Google this one, I'm assuming it could be a place, there's the name, and you've taken different images. And then the thought process to have this in your mindset at the beginning, and then take the pictures that you wanted to be able to make this, where the three separate images, but you've got this singular line coming through. I think you've also been, some of it's going to be fortunate for you with the lighting on the day, but also your post-processing, the way that you've managed to sort of match the lighting conditions through the three images. There's not an obvious difference shift in any kind of tone through the image. So you've got this sort of strong white part connecting all three. I thought it was a very clever image. 19. I kind of like the title in a way, back of a bus. It kind of, yeah, there's all sorts of connotations to back of a bus. It's an expression we use in the UK for sometimes describing how somebody looks, because the back of a bus isn't normally very attractive. Again, strong color. Red is such a powerful color. It highlights, danger, excitement, lust. There's all sorts of things that can come from the color red. And you've done, for me, really well to photograph it and maintain some different tones to it where the lighting has caught it. Red, and a bit like green, red can be really difficult digitally. It can all of a sudden just look like a blotch and not have different bits of texture through it. And then whatever this, I don't know whether it's a reflection or whatever, this other bit coming through the image, for you to frame it and be fortunate that it was, be able to get that bottom right corner, and you've got this sort of line coming up through, and then actually having the vents and the fins on the left hand side, just on that edge. And again, it's a picture of nothing in particular, but something very deliberate from what the photographer's seen. Again, I don't know what that has created through the image, that reflection, or whether it is a pattern on the bus, but a really simplistic picture. But for me, it just works, and there's a lot of the photographer in you. That's going to score 18. I mean, again, I'm telling you photographers stuff, depth of field in macro photography when you're trying to do this is so difficult. You're working in millimeters all the time. So very careful photography from Mr. Photographer. These two nearest front stamens, absolutely bitingly sharp, exactly as you want. And again, you get to see the depth of field that you're working with, because the third one in the middle, that's already starting to go soft because it's just that much out of the focal plane. So really well taken. The conversion to mono, yeah, why not? I think that works in this instance. And again, I know you can't do a lot about this. I did just find the bottom right corner. I know it's going to be out of focus because of the depth of field, but I felt it was just starting to intrude into the image a little bit. And while you couldn't necessarily crop it, post-production, because I think you would lose, I think you'd lose too much of the image. Could you add a vignette? Would that help it? I don't know. It was just intruding and losing a little bit for me, but certainly the skill to get the stamens bitingly sharp at the front, credit to you as the photographer. That's also scoring an 18. Again, there's a little hint of infrared about this, but that's always really dangerous to say for certain and really set your stall on it. But there is just that feeling about it. Again, the lighting conditions, I've said that a lot about photography. It's lighting is everything. I did feel that the wall was perhaps over bright. That's not to say there's any burnt out in it. It's just a feeling I was getting, and that may be because of the infrared part of it. And I kind of wanted to see a bit more grunge and texture through that. Certainly the inclusion again of the tree top left, well thought from the photographer that it's not intruding on the wall itself, but it is just filling that empty space that would have been in the top left, that you just know somebody's going to go, well, there's a lot of negative space that isn't adding to the image, but what can you do about it? So using that bit of tree, I think, has filled it in as well. So yeah, I do like what you were doing with it. I just felt it was over bright on that wall, and that's going to score 16. Again, macro photography, really challenging, particularly if it's outdoors. You've got wind conditions to deal with, different lighting conditions to deal with. Absolutely pulled this one out the bag with how you've captured it, with the lighting conditions, the background being diffused, blurred. There's a lovely bit of backlighting coming through. There's almost a what is there not to like about it? The photographer knows what they're doing about the image. So yeah, well done to you with this image. It's unusual to see and caught at the right time. 19. Again, I'm absolutely getting what you're doing with this, and there's bits of me that I kind of go, yeah, I like what you've done, and there are other bits of me that I'm thinking, I don't know, would I have done this, would I have done that? Do I need the wall? Is it all about just the mirror and the girl and the reflection? Does the wall really add anything? I don't know, but then maybe it's the mirror in the wall is kind of saying, well, this is a step through the wall into this other world. Again, we're all going to read the story differently to it. Certainly the effect that you've created with different colors on the dress, and I'm assuming you've done that in post-production, again, not obvious. Love the sort of stare back from the one in the mirror. I've got a feeling there's a slightly different head style as well. And again, the background that you've used in the mirror, it's really strong, and you kind of get that, what you're saying about the dark place, and then that sort of color from her. So there is a lot to like about the image. There's a very strong story coming through in the image. It's just about personal preferences on some parts of it. 18. Again, really challenging subject matter to go and take pictures of. And it's about, finding the right dewdrop, can you get a great reflection in it? And it's about all that sort of looking. But I did, for me, feel that the image was quite busy. I certainly don't need most of the right-hand side of it. We could have lost that. And again, I know I'm being picky about some of this, but the actual part of the image where the sort of dewdrop in the center, and I'm sort of talking about this sort of part here. I think that's really strong. You've managed to capture that nice and sharply. There's a lovely little reflection in it, but I'm kind of looking at to the left of that, certainly at the bottom. There's that, whatever that bright bit of dew is, quite reflecting. It's almost brighter, well, probably is actually the brightest part in the image. So I'm not really looking at the reflection you want me to look at. And then the same above it, it's kind of quite light, but not as bright. So whether there's enough megapixels in the image to crop it in and focus on those, I don't know if you could have got any closer. This couldn't, it could have been at such a point you couldn't lean forward or take 2 steps nearer to it. But for me, the strength of the image was certainly in that section. 16. So when's a mountain become a fell and when's a fell become a hill? There is some odd choice of language in the UK about what we call a lake and a pond, and a tarn in the Lake District is a bit of water, but they won't call it a tarn anywhere else in the UK because it'll be a lake or a pond. We have some strange terminologies. Again, photographers use the composition. They're using this foreground rock to fill it in. We've got a stone summit with the lake in the right hand side. So we're using this sort of composition to work with the image. And yeah, you're telling us it's sunrise, so it is going to be slightly brighter one side than the other. And that's okay. But I did feel that what you were starting to do was, because you wanted some detail in the structure on the left, it looks like it might have had a bit of post-processing that does just look to be a little bit of haloing around some of the edges. And maybe this would have been a shot that could have been taken with a grad filter at the time, or sort of do some bracketing and take 3 or 5 and sort of blend them afterwards. It just felt it had been lifted to get that detail and structure in it. Certainly from a point of view of the landscape in the background, there's certainly a feel on the right hand side that it was quite a cold morning. There's almost a hint of a bit of frost. So I certainly get that feel that the walk up to this early morning was worth it for the light and the colours that you then saw coming through. 17. It's the I don't know how much the guys from America have been involved with Lancaster, but the ubiquitous bird on a stick, as it's known, isn't it? And kingfisher's really difficult to take pictures of. At least this looks like it's a genuine out in the wild one, and not at a place where we recognise the stump and everything else about it. Dealt well with lighting conditions. It does look like there was some quite bright light coming in from the back of it. I'm not suggesting it's got any burnout in it, but it does look quite shiny on the back of the tail. But most importantly, the head and eye are nice and sharp, lovely little catch light in it. Love the angle of the head. Again, we're creating that diagonal in the image for that compositional tool. Background diffused nicely. Do I need so much on the right hand side? Could we bring it in to end it at that little bit of the twiggery? There's still enough space on the right hand side, but again, personal preference and choice of what you've chosen to do. And that's going to score 18. I think I'm on fairly safe ground with this to say that it is a composite image. It's there looks like there's lots of elements into this, and sometimes with these images, it's the thought process from the photographer. You thought of this beforehand, and you need to go and capture the images to suit. And it's then about making it as a believable image and not obvious cutouts and bits and pieces around. The background that you've used, I think, works really well for this. That sort of moody, dark, sort of greeny bluies, I think, really work and enhance the, I suppose, the terror that existing from the face that's sort of lowering the opacity in the center of the image, and this sort of lovely angelic sort of feel to this person that's appears to be floating and has got a smile and looking back at you. Great story in this, and from the photographer's point of view, a lot of thought has gone into the image about what you wanted to create from the concept. That's an image we're going to hold. Yeah, again, it's all about structures and elements in the image. And I can see you were trying to use part of the branch and stuff to block the bright sun in the background. And does it matter if it was not trying to be hidden by the tree? No, for me, I think it would be okay. I think it'd work. I think again, some lovely colours, some lovely late light coming through. The lovely oranges and stuff that come through. I'm glad you resisted the temptation to try and lift any shadows in this tree and leave it completely silhouetted. And the same with the people, just leave them completely natural and as it is. I think it just suits it. Again, well done for the framing. You've kept all the tree in at the top and then the left-hand side. It's been so easy just to crop some pieces out. And, while the people aren't necessary for the image, they're positioned beautifully for you. They're spaced out. They're just filling that little bit of void that, would be happy with the space anyway. The obvious thing, of course, is, again, it's more of a thing that will connect guys in the UK. You're only meant to have odd numbers, 3, 5, and 7. You put an even number in, so that's wrong completely. But so that resonates more probably with the UK guys. 4 is absolutely fine, and that's going to score 18. Again, for me, an image that is very deliberate on your part. I'm assuming the girl wasn't in the scene and you've added it afterwards. But again, not obvious. It sort of blends in with what you were trying to do. The overlaying texture, yeah, again, I think that works. The grunge and everything about it. I don't know if the name of the place is synonymous with somewhere. We certainly had some places in East Sussex where I used to live in the UK. There was an old mental asylum called Helenley, and it reminds me of that of some old institution that's dim and dark past, and it's very urbex. And then putting this person in, the hair coming over the front almost makes it looks like they're back to front. and that's probably deliberate what you were trying to do. So I thought there was a lot to like about the image, and it's going to score 18. Really difficult picture to try and deal with. You've got some real contrast problems with the light that's happening. I don't know quite how strong the wind is, but you've got that buffeting to deal with. And then you've got this choice about what you do with the surfer. Again, sticking him out on that left-hand side, some people say it's a bit uncomfortable because he's just about to disappear out the scene. Me personally, I'd have cropped it in a bit more from the left and really put him on the edge of the frame because I know it upsets UK judges. But for me, you put him in the right spot. I love the surf that's crashed. Really nice high shutter speed has really frozen it, and it's given us a real sense of speed. And also for me, there's a sort of sense of scale with the person, and just about how fragile we are against Mother Nature. So I think there's a lot to a story about that, but also dealt with some challenging photographic conditions. 17. Really tiny little bird, and it's, again, you, Mr. Nature Photographer, know what you're doing, pin sharp on the eye. Again, looking at shallow depths of field, this is a tiny little bird, and already the tail is disappearing into softness through it. Because it's in reeds, background is beautifully diffused, lovely color palette through it, but you've had enough of the right lighting that it's allowed detail and shadow and light to make the bird separate from the background and not get lost in it. And that one we're also holding. This has to be shot in America. That's not to say it's from an American photographer. We just don't have this really in the UK. We don't have the abandoned vehicles in the same way that are accessible to us in an abundance. There's a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go there, lose it, either crop the image down or claim it out or do something. Just lose that bit. Really tiny distraction, but once you see it, it's just there. So just lose it somehow, because the rest of what you've got in here, it just works. There's the right lighting conditions have given you enough different colors that come through with the rust and the mosses, and just this tree growing up in front of the wheel. It's just what is it with photographers and rust and ruin? We're just drawn to it like bees to honey, aren't we? I was only going to say something else, but I managed to stop myself. We're just drawn to it, and I think you've got a cracking image. I do believe, however, that there's actually a stronger, better image within this. And even though it's shot singly, you can still do this. You can do a single tone map on an image, and it's playing with HDR. And I think if you just had a little play with HDR and just subtly played around with that, man, this would really lift this, because it will just completely change how some of the textures are interacting with each other in the colors. So it's a really, really strong image, but I think there's actually a stronger image to be got out of it as well. And that's scoring 18. Now, when I decided to get involved in judging, I also decided I needed to do a lot of different genres to understand the difficulties of taking images. So I've done a fair bit of portraiture, so I've got some understanding of what's involved and what I'm looking for, so that at least I've got some idea of what's going on to create an image. And remember what we spoke about key lines very early on. So you've got a lovely white key line here, Might have been tempted to lower the opacity. You're not losing marks for it because you're not, it's just an observation. I love the pose. There's a softness and sensuality about that pose that I just think works. But there's again a couple of things for me. If we take the hand, so where it's being lit, and whether this is natural or with artificial doesn't matter, the hand is just slightly brighter than the face. And again, post-production wise, you could just bring that lighting down a little on the hand and just lift it on the head, just particularly around the sort of eye. And I think that will really connect. Again, I know in the UK, a lot of the judges here would talk about that there's no separation from the hair in the background, particularly going around the rear of the image. But to me, that's exactly what you wanted to create. You wanted it to be that darkness around the back of it to create that soft and sensualness through the front part of the image. So again, for me, it's a strong image, but I think there is still more you could get out of that one. That's also scoring an 18. Again, you know, macro and small bugs and beasts are really, really difficult and challenging. You know, you've got everything sharp in this. The wings are beautifully sharp. You can see through them. Even the hairs on the legs and on both of them, you know, I think it's been beautifully captured. The background again, you know, it's diffused. It just absolutely works. It's a really, really good, strong image. I would see this doing well at I'm going to say national and international level, because I know that I don't know if you guys in America do any of the PSAs, but there's also FIAPs. To me, this should be doing well at that sort of level as well. And that's going to score 19. There's a sense and feeling about this, a bit like one of the early images I spoke about from infrared, about how it felt like it was film. And this to me has exactly that same feel, that it's got a film feel about it. Digital cameras produce images that are so bitingly sharp nowadays that, you know, sometimes they can look unnatural, but this has got a feel of being. And normally, as a judge, when we say, you know, an image is soft, we're being polite about it being out of focus. That's not what I mean with this when I say it's soft. There's a softness about it that looks very natural. There's a bit that does just bug me a little bit with the image. And while I'm aware if it's an original film image, it's there and you can't do anything about it, but you've converted it into a digital so it can have something done about it. And it's this, what looks like a modern LED light coming out of his shoulder. There's enough of a sky behind it that you could easily clone that out and get rid of it. Now, it may be part of the machinery that's being dragged along, I don't know, but it was just for me something that I'd have just got rid of that bit of it. And I know then you're saying, well, what about the pipe coming out from behind the horse? That doesn't bother me so much. It's just that bit coming out of his shoulder that just irks. But as I say, it's got a lovely, natural, soft feel about it. 17, quite nearly lost my place there. So again, I'm going to say you've played safe. You've kind of put them into the thirds. What would happen? And I know it might work in cropping, but certainly in camera, what would happen if they were sat there? You know, right bottom corner, completely the wrong place for them to be in, and then you've got all that negative space that they're going into. Again, just a thought. Sometimes we just play safe with images. Again, lighting, you know, works really well for you. You've got just enough light on them that we can see what they are without them being silhouetted. But how jammy was you with the wingspans? And again, I know somebody could have cropped one out and dropped it in, but again, I don't feel that's been the case. You know, having the wings in that position, I think just added a lovely little extra element to it for me. 17. Beautifully framed. Again, you've been really careful about anything getting in the way. Quite often we've got, when we're shooting through trees, there could be sky in the way. You've made sure to get rid of any of that kind of stuff, so there's nothing intruding. But there is some lovely light coming through and lighting up the leaves, but it's not really giving you much of a problem with the water itself. Sometimes you have some real challenges with the bright lights coming through, and it kind of just creates too many challenges. There is a sense again that this has been quite a long shutter speed, you know, certainly over 30 seconds in my mind, because of the way it's rendered some of the colours in the moss. And again, it's really strong. The texture is really good. Love the lighting underneath the little lip. And then again, it's just, you know, personal preferences to shutter speed about the image. Yeah, again, well composed, well set out, and that's going to score 18. So again, you've got one elbow in, but then the one on the left, you know, you've kind of, for me, I'd have gone bold and just cropped it right off there. It's almost looking like it wasn't, you know, if you crop it off where I put the line, it's very deliberate, and it says, yes, you've chosen to absolutely crop it there. Whereas there's a sense of you didn't quite get it all in, or you haven't been bold enough with the crop. But that's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is then kind of what you're creating with the image. And I'm kind of connecting and getting where you're going. You know, the strong water coming down the way it's been lit onto the head, the expression that you've got from your model. You know, there's kind of a sense of enjoying what the water's doing. But again, lighting, just be careful because you're using water as well. The left arm, you know, where the water's sitting and the light's caught it, the light's reflecting, it's catching the eye and it's making it quite bright. Again, just see if you can dull that side down, and then we'd be sort of really focused and centered on the head itself. That's going to score 16. That's going to score a 19. Number 15. That's scoring 19. Number 16. That's scoring 19. 39. That's also going to score a 19. Okay, so I believe you wanted a best image out of the other ones, don't you? So let's start. Let's start with number 10. That one is scoring a 20. I was getting worried that the Lancaster PA wasn't going to get a high score, so I'm glad that one's come in red. That's also going to get a 20. And I'm still not going to ask what it is because then it'll spoil it for me. 14. That's also a 20. 22. It's also going to be a 20. I've lost where I am. 31. Again, another 20. 49. Also a 20. 53. That is also a 20. Quite unusual for me to give so many 20s, but they're worthy of it. And any of them, even some of the 19s, any of them could win on another day in another competition. Best overall. So, Mr. Photographer, I'm going to ask a question if you're in the room as well. That's going to be number 31. I think just the lighting conditions for that were just stunning and it just well composed. My question I want to ask to the photographer there here was, how deliberate was it putting that lighthouse up on the right-hand side?
It was very deliberate. I've got some where it's right in the middle,
yep,
but didn't like them. So this is the one that got my vote anyway. Excellent.
Because I know in the UK, a lot of judges wouldn't like it because they want it to be on the thirds. For me, I like things that are a bit out on the edge. Shutter speed, was it sort of in excess of a minute?
It was pretty close to a minute, I think. Yeah, I mean, it was a North California coast, and it's usually pretty rough waters up there, so it kind of wasn't too hard. There was not much tidal work going on, so it's just kind of there.
Yeah, but the lighting for you was just that lighting on that sort of rock in the foreground here is just really aided for you to get some lovely color and texture out of it. So yeah, really like that image.
Thank you.
I have the scores for the first international battle that we have done.